and let that start. There we go. So welcome along to our Tableau Prep user group for this month. We've got an exciting session from Alexandra for you today. So we're going to jump into that in 5 or 10 minutes. I'm just going to take you through a couple of housekeeping things and a little bit about Tableau Conference next week. This session is being recorded, so you will be able to follow up with it on YouTube in a couple of days' time when we publish it there. Or if you want to share it with any of your friends or colleagues. As we move into Alex's session, feel free to use the Q&A box to drop any questions in there that you might want answered after the chat. But we will get into this right away. So if you are new to the Tableau Prep user group, I'm Jack Parry. I'm one of the leaders. I've been leading the Prep user group for nearly 5 years now, which seems like a long time. But also Jenny Martin is one of my colleagues and co-leads of the user group. Jenny's based in London, and if you are familiar with the Prep user group, you'll know that we rotate around different time zones. So this session today is for a sort of America's APAC friendly time zone, and then we rotate to Americas and Europe. So you will see Jenny on other sessions, but it's late in London right now, which is why she's not here. But exciting, next week we have Tableau Conference coming up. Is anyone heading to San Diego? I am. Will I see any of you there? Alex is. You can let us know in the chat. Really exciting time, Tableau Conference in San Diego. I went last year. It was the first time it was in San Diego. It had been in Vegas for a few years, or first time it had been in San Diego in a while. We have to alternate years. Okay. So yeah, great experience. But what's great with Tableau Conference is there's tons of sessions for you to enjoy online as well on Salesforce Plus. So if you're not going to be in San Diego, then there's a ton of sessions out there for you to make the most of next year. You can watch all of the major sessions, like the keynote on Tuesday, Devs on Stage, which is on Wednesday. I believe the Flurledge twins are also doing a keynote style session on Thursday morning. So there's lots to be excited about. If you are heading out to Tableau Conference, then on Monday, before the conference actually kicks off, there is this Tableau and Agentforce hackathon taking place. This is free to enter. There's a grand prize of attendance to Tableau Conference 2026 covered. And there are all sorts of other prizes available, like gift cards for the Tableau store. If you are a full conference attendee or sponsor, then it's going to cost you nothing to attend, and you can get hands-on and experiment with everything that Tableau are doing with Agentforce and Salesforce today. I've heard lots of good things about this, so if you're going to be there, then it might be worth exploring on Monday if you are in town by then. There are Tableau doctor sessions at Tableau Conference. So, if you have been struggling with a calculation for a while in Tableau, or you want to get some troubleshooting on performance issues, then maybe you should check out a Tableau doctor session. Could be a great thing for you to get some support with what you're working on so far, but also it's just a great opportunity in general to connect with other like-minded Tableau users who might be able to support you. And finally, I just wanted to pull out a few Tableau Prep highlights, as we're all here to talk about Tableau Prep. There are quite a few sessions. These are not all of the sessions that involve prep. I had a little search the other day on the session builder, and I saw about 11 or 12 sessions each day for Tableau Prep. Some of those are repeat sessions, but some of them will be available on Salesforce Plus as well. So if you are not going to be there, you can catch up on these. But we've got next level data preparation. We've got a Tableau Prep story. We've got the use of Tableau agent in prep flows, which is useful if you're trying to speed up writing some calculations. And I've been playing around with agent today. There's the famous speed tipping session at Tableau Conference, and this year they're doing a Tableau Prep edition. I think that's the first time I've seen that. I'm not sure if it was around last year, but definitely the first time I've seen it. And then finally, we have a session actually from two of my colleagues at the Information Lab, Taming the Data Beast, Normalization Strategies in Tableau, from Lorna Brown, who is a Tableau visionary, and Robin Vinoy, who's one of our trainees in the UK, or coaches, sorry, of our trainees. But that's everything I'm going to cover today. I'm going to hand things over to Alexandra to talk about how the city of Chicago have been transforming compensation data management with Tableau Prep. So, Alex, I will pass things over to you.
Thank you, Jack. Let's see, let me get this pulled up. Okay. So, yeah, I'm Alexandra. I'm here to talk about kind of how we at the City of Chicago have used Tableau Prep to shift our compensation data management. So one, I just want to say out of the gate that this is not going to be a very technical session. I'm not going to kind of get into the weeds of the prep flow, but more to kind of talk about my team's journey with Tableau Prep more broadly, what this project, the context for this project, and how Tableau fits kind of into that that larger puzzle, and how it kind of really helped us. So we can get going. So about me, I'm Alex. I'm now the Assistant Budget Director for the Data Analytics team at the Office of Budget and Management for the City of Chicago. So I've been with the city for 2 years on the data analytics team here, but the assistant budget director is a recent development. Before that, I was an analyst on this team. And before coming to the city, I was doing my master's of public policy, and I did some data analytics work there, mostly in R, but I really learned Tableau on the job here. So I'm a relatively new user. 2-ish, honestly, a little less than 2 years. But it's been a really great learning experience, and I largely credit that both to my team and just like the wealth of resources that exist, including, user groups like this. So that is to say that you may have heard my boss, Deputy Budget Director Lewis Powell, either this user group or other Tableau user groups. He's a very prolific Tableau user and evangelist, and we're really grateful to have him kind of lead our team. And he's really kind of shaped how we use Tableau for our team and really for the city. So to kind of say a little bit more about how we started using Tableau and Tableau Prep, I think we've had Tableau for like nearly 10 years probably on our team. But there's been like huge shifts in how we've used it over time or what we've had access to. So, it kind of started with just desktop. And then I think getting Tableau Prep was like a huge kind of opened so many doors of what we can do. And then eventually we got kind of Tableau Server. And then in the last year, we've launched our Tableau Enterprise Server. So really bringing Tableau, making it easier to kind of use Tableau and collaborate across city departments and across users. I think our team often functions, so within the Office of Budget and Management, we have all of these different areas around kind of how we monitor the city's budget, along with kind of revenue, capital improvement, as well as our kind of workforce and compensation, which we'll talk about today. And so our team, as the data analytics team, really functions as like internal consultants, and kind of helping other teams kind of address projects. And a huge piece of this, and both why we function this way and why Tableau has been such a powerful tool for us, is just the city's kind of software and data sits in like some 200 different systems. So, multiple financial systems and multiple HR systems and kind of everything under the sun. And so just getting to that data at a baseline before you can even do anything with it is a challenge. And so kind of having Tableau Prep and has been kind of really essential for us to be able to access that data, get it to kind of talk to each other and actually do stuff with it. So to kind of talk a little bit more broadly about the city's structure, I think that's important kind of to understand this particular use case. So there are 34 city departments. We have a $17.3 billion budget this year, and a huge chunk of that is for personnel. So of our kind of our corporate fund our general fund makes up, the majority of our funds, and personnel represents approximately 62% of those dollars. And so that's not just kind of salary and wages, but also kind of overtime, benefits like healthcare, and then of course pensions. So it is a kind of huge cost and dynamic that's kind of for our kind of workforce management. And also another layer of that is over 90 or nearly 90% of the city's personnel are members of unions. So we have kind of dozens of different unions with different collective bargaining agreements that are kind of governing the, those kind of personnel's salaries and benefits. So that can bring us to this particular use case. And one thing I want to start off with that also I think is part of the reason Tableau Prep is so cool is that this was actually a project that was started by a previous team member of mine that I've now kind of taken over maintaining and updating. So this has kind of been an ongoing project for several years, and I've kind of only recently took it over in the last 6 months or so. But essentially, kind of as I mentioned, we kind of serve as internal consultants for other teams in our department, and the compensation team manages, as it sounds like, the compensation for the city's workforce. And so they're working with kind of other teams in our department, along with, of course, human resources and Department of Law, et cetera, finance, to kind of manage and maintain the city's compensation. And so a key piece of this is salary schedules. So that's kind of what you see on this bottom right here is essentially kind of, for a given year, a union will have a salary schedule that will kind of govern what, a job title is tied to a specific kind of grade or class. And that salary schedule kind of governs what that salary looks like. And there are kind of steps over time. So you'll see kind of increases as someone kind of gains tenure in a position. So this is a behemoth to kind of maintain and update. And essentially it's, for a long time, it had lived in Excel with our compensation team really kind of handling it start to finish. And it was very manual, very time consuming, and was not a very flexible structure. So it required just a lot of work for them to kind of update these schedules as, new bargaining agreements are reached, or, we just kind of, there's a new year, there's a new cost of living increase, or any other number of reasons that kind of, salaries can change. So essentially the kind of clear answer again was to turn to Tableau for our team, just because again, it's a really great tool in our data analytics toolbox. And it felt like a clear way that we could kind of help the compensation team just do their jobs more easily, and take out some of the challenges that existed in the kind of current state. So I think when it comes to any like project in prep that you're starting, or Tableau project really in general, that you're kind of starting from scratch and it's a big project, I think so much of it happens before you even open up prep. And I think that, in this case, since we were kind of trying to help this other team with this process, really understanding what the existing workflows looked like and why they were, how they were doing it, why they were doing it, and really how it fit into this broader, the broader system of, how compensation and how these salary schedules get managed and shared. Because so often, it can be, and I say this especially in the public sector, is that we often have these really old systems. And when we have kind of like a new tool, it can be really exciting. You want to kind of just like maximize the potential, kind of feel like you're bringing us into the 21st century. And in reality, I think realizing that like we have to make sure that we're not blowing up the existing structure in a way that then means that it doesn't fit into the broader kind of puzzle if another department is still relying on kind of a different systems or a different structure, that kind of these pieces don't fit together. So realizing that we can't kind of Tableau and Tableau Prep are a tool, but that we need to be kind of thoughtful about what we're producing and how it's fitting into the existing system. I think also understanding in this case, because there were all of these moving pieces, essentially like the universe of changes that can happen to a salary schedule. So the kind of like obvious one is that, as there's a cost of living increase or a new bargaining agreement is reached, that you will see kind of wage increases as like percentages. So that, there's a 3% increase this year and then 5%, and then it's tied to CPI or XYZ. And so that does make up like the majority of, our kind of, those changes to an existing salary schedule. But there are all sorts of other changes that may come up. So for example, it might be that those steps that determine kind of the years of service that determine kind of the step you're at and like the tenure, which determines your kind of the step of pay, those can change over time. And so those might change from one schedule to 1 year to another. Or it might be that a job title changes grades, or whatever kind of like structural changes that maybe not as like, certainly not as frequent as those, the pay increases, but that still exist. So understanding that kind of all of those pieces. And then just at a baseline of like, to make our lives easier, restructuring the data. Again, this was like a process that was really built for the core operations of our compensation team, but it was so kind of rigid that it wasn't really useful for other things that we needed it for. And it also was not in a machine readable format at first. So kind of doing some work on the front end to restructure the data to kind of make it more machine readable, make it just kind of easier to use in to start with in prep, made our lives so much easier. So yes, I think that's all to say that there's being thoughtful about all of the steps that happen before you even kind of connect to data in prep can really help to this project be successful. And I think I continue to bring that to other projects. So then it was, time to get into it. So like I said, I'm not going to kind of dive too deep or get into the weeds on the prep flow itself, but you can see this is parts even of the kind of behemoth that is this salary schedule prep flow, or the core. It's not even the only one, the core. But I think one thing that I took away from this is that, like, again, because this was a project where we were starting from scratch of kind of building this new structure for salary schedules, that it was really important to kind of think about where we were trying to go and work backwards from there. Because it can be really easy, I think, to go down a rabbit hole of kind of certain steps and realize, oh no, that's actually not bringing me to where I want to be. though that inevitably still happens. But I think being kind of like intentional about where you're trying to go and what you want the end result to be can make it easier to kind of figure out the minimum steps to get there. I think another big piece, again, particularly with this project, was recognizing that it is complex and that you're not going to kind of have, there wasn't going to be kind of a really streamlined, sleek, linear flow, that it was just going to be a kind of, it was going to be complex. And so really taking it piece by piece, rather than attempting to kind of smash it into kind of one kind of linear steps. So again, back to those like different kind of the universe of updates of essentially like thinking about those wage increases, those percent increases as one kind of key part, and thinking about, okay, what do we need to do to kind of build those and track those, and then thinking about that kind of restructuring of a salary schedule is like a different piece, and that those pieces are going to come back together at the end, right, to kind of create our data source, but that doesn't need to all happen all in the same kind of single step or kind of single section of a flow. So I think that was really important to kind of make sure this was it made it easier also to kind of come back to afterwards if there is kind of one section, one kind of piece of the work that you're trying to change or update. So I think a couple other thoughts on just like, you know, my favorite parts of Tableau Prep in this project. I think one, you know, and this is something I've seen, like, again, I'm a pretty new Tableau user, only, 2 years, but I feel like I've already seen so many new kind of features that will come out with different updates and stuff. And so I think figuring out how to maximize the features you have in whatever version you have. So again, this project is now a few years old. So I'm sure like if we had access to whatever 2024.3 blah, 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 that there's some cool tools that we could have, you know, used differently in this prep flow. But I think just being thoughtful about what steps and options you do have available to you and kind of making the most of it. I think, you know, this was a flow that just used every single type of kind of data transformation many times over. And I think another key piece of this, and I think also this is something where I want to highlight just how grateful I am for the kind of, our team and the Tableau community in helping make those decisions of where you're going in building a prep flow. So, you know, very much this was a project where, you know, I think when my coworker was building it, or when I've been kind of doing some of the recent updates, you know, you'll come across something and we're able to kind of say, oh, I think this was similar. We're hitting a roadblock that's similar to kind of something that happened in a different project that we did. And being able to kind of go to our coworkers and talk about it and kind of see how we wound up doing it in that other project, whether it works or not, or whether that makes sense here. And then obviously kind of turning to like the online Tableau community and resources, because there are so many out there to really kind of solve problems kind of as they come up is really great. Like, again, this is very much a learn kind of as you go. And I know that was true for my coworker, because we'll get to this in a minute. I'm getting ahead of myself, but this was one of the first scripts that our team, or one of the first flows that our team built that used kind of like the script step that was kind of tied to an R script. And so being able to kind of have a lot of resources and learn as we're doing it is really powerful. I think in a project like this, something else that I took away or have recently been learning is just because there was kind of this initial build of this huge prep flow that kind of really, really built these salary schedules, but it's an ongoing process as we get new schedules, new restructuring, like there's always changes. And so realizing at what point we kind of have to kind of fully separate out the initial kind of flow that created this kind of upstream data source that created the salary schedules from what's kind of happening afterwards as we're continually updating. And so, Tableau Prep makes it really easy to do those kind of iterative updates, but you have to kind of be thoughtful and organized, I think, with a project this big in order to kind of manage it for yourself of just like what is happening where and when. I think another piece that is really important for us is having separate keys. So again, because we have so many different software systems, having kind of separate keys that help those systems talk to each other and crosswalks really helps minimize the duplication or kind of mismatches in any of our data. So for example, like we have, kind of understanding which titles belong to which bargaining units. That's something that kind of lives separately and that we join in on these flows to kind of create a complete data source, but then we're only having to ever, kind of update these separate keys. And I think kind of Tableau Prep makes that really doable. So I think to talk a little bit more about the R piece, essentially we realized that doing all of the math of these rate increases really needed to happen kind of not in Prep, and that needed to be in R. And Tableau Prep actually makes that pretty easy. So essentially my coworker, she wrote this script to kind of do all the math in the background. And then what's great is that you really don't ever touch this script anymore. So that now this script step just kind of lives in Tableau Prep. All we do kind of, if I am going into the prep flow to kind of make some updates, is that, I still open R and I kind of connect to the rserve library, which is the package that kind of connects Tableau Prep and R. But then that's all we have to do. And it's really great because both from not having to kind of deal into any different systems, but also for, not all the people on our team know R. And so having it be this really kind of simple, streamlined option to happen in the background, but still have someone be able to kind of run the prep flow if they need, without kind of touching anything else is really great. So this is kind of the final product, is the City of Chicago Pay Plan Library. So this is a kind of snapshot, I think let's hope this video works, of the kind of pay plan library on our kind of Tableau Enterprise server. So you can see it's kind of a very similar structure to our the Excel kind of tables that I showed you. But what was great is that because we restructured the data, is that now there's like additional features that we can add. So you can look up kind of title to schedule, or kind of understand what different titles are on a schedule. And I think that's been really, really great. Or min and max rates of just like at a baseline, what these kind of snapshots are. So again, I think this was a case where this is not like the most feature-rich dashboard. It's really just a table is the core piece of it. And that was because, again, the whole aim of this project was like, how do we help our compensation team kind of navigate, do their job kind of more easily and efficiently. And this is what they need. But what's been great is because of what happened on the back end in prep and restructuring all that data, is that we have so many more options to kind of use it in different ways to do these kind of lookups, which is really kind of powerful. So let's see. Kind of some reflections. I think, at a baseline, this was a successful project. Again, now there's that salary resolution that goes out kind of every year, those salary schedule tables that are in the back are now kind of Tableau exports instead of Excel. I think, kind of thinking specifically about how Tableau Prep fit into this project, I think in this case, low code, but I think the low or no code options for Tableau Prep are really wonderful. And I think one piece that was like particularly great for a project of this size is like also the built-in documentation, and how easy it is to kind of follow, kind of retrace your steps when you're coming back to it after a while. And not only retrace your steps, but that it makes it easier to kind of hand things off. So again, this was a project that I inherited from another team member. And I was a little nervous about it at first because it's such a kind of, there's so many moving pieces in the prep flow, and then the script, et cetera, that I was a little nervous about what it would be like to update it. And it's honestly been so much more kind of smooth than I expected. And I think that's both, because of some of the features built into prep in terms of just how easy it is to track these different steps, but also, the work that our team puts into kind of developing some of that extra documentation so that we're doing those kind of, those handoffs are smooth. I think the real bonus of this whole project was, while this was really developed primarily for our compensation team, since we did kind of move it to our enterprise server where kind of Tableau users across the city can have access to it, we've seen so many more people use it than I expected to. And, we have kind of a lot of, and I think people that are, glancing at it once or kind of return to it again and again, and realizing that, this is such a great tool for a manager who's trying to kind of understand their staff's kind of salary and structure, or, folks in our HR department, or kind of our budget analysts who are having to kind of pull these different analyses, or just an employee who wants to understand, at what point am I going to get to this next kind of, where do I jump up on the pay scale, or, whatever it may be. So I think it's been really great to kind of see that expand. And I think looking ahead, now that we have this kind of, this has existed in its current state for a few years, now we're kind of thinking about what does maintenance and what do updates look like as we continue to get kind of functional updates. And so that's definitely been something, because I was just realizing that as I was making some of these annual updates in the latest kind of prep flow, it's kind of like, okay, I think it's time to start rethinking how we're doing this again, as we kind of have now built this such a great infrastructure, but that it's kind of already moved past what we expected. So that's really all that I have. I just wanted to say thank you. Thank you to Jack and Jenny for kind of reaching out and including me. Really happy to be here. And again, I'm Alex. My contact info is up here. And yeah, that's really all I have. So we can, I'll stop sharing and we can jump to any questions.
Thanks, Alex. It's really interesting to see what you guys have got going on, and it's nice to have 2 presentations from you guys in the last couple of months and sharing what you guys are up to in the city of Chicago. We do have a question from Nathan, which I was also going to ask a little bit about, around leveraging R scripts in prep and the stability of that. Can you see the Q&A, or do you want me to?
Yes, I can.
Okay.
I think. Okay. That is a great question. So I'm going to be honest. This has come up. So one thing is that normally we put a lot of our, manage a lot of our prep flows in our server. And because of some of the structural insecurity stuff, these prep flows for the salary schedules that have those built-in R scripts, we do not. We kind of have them on our share drive, kind of external to server. And I think that's I think that we haven't had a ton of issues with that, the kind of crashing in this particular script or this particular prep flow, but I have noticed it in some others. But I honestly don't have a great answer for it. I think that like it's the splitting up, I think has helped sometimes. And then honestly, you know, there's been a couple points where it was frustrating enough that we kind of just, we shifted how we were like approaching that particular prep flow and just kind of kept it separately. But it honestly, even though this prep flow has grown, I think that we haven't had any issues, but I also don't know if that's because the script is really relatively short and not very kind of, there's not a lot in there. So yeah, that's a good question. Jack, what's been your experience?
I mean, I actually haven't used R scripts very
Oh,
much
no.
or ever. I mean, I've written a few Python scripts a while ago to like call an API and then just pull that data in. But again, the scripts have been relatively short, and they're also not, they've been more like experimental things rather than anything in production. But we got a comment saying that sometimes use more than a single script, but not had any issues of crashing. I don't know if you see, do you, when things are crashing, can you see in the like R server what's happening in the logs or anything like that? I know with Python you have to connect it to like a TabPy server. So I think it's similar.
That's a good, I honestly don't remember because it has been a minute. Nathan, do you want to chime in with your experience?
It sounds like you might be using scripts quite a bit in your flows generally. A question I was going to have is like, at what point do you determine whether to use a script or not? Is it just like when it's not possible to do it in Tableau Prep, or is there any other kind of determining factor?
Essentially, I think we like definitely try to stay in prep as much as we can. But there have been a few projects where it just feels like it's just easier to kind of do externally. But it does, I do think there's been a couple like, honestly, the other experiences I have are also kind of like more experimental. Of like, it was kind of like an ad hoc project that we might do for a little while. And this is really the, yeah, maybe one of the only projects that we have like in production and that has kind of been continuously maintained for like several years that uses a script.
Okay. Yeah. Nathan, I just gave you the ability to speak if you do want to say anything. But I know that you've written some comments there about.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, so I've used this a little bit, and what I've generally come across is that it tends to work fine for kind of. I think the data sets aren't particularly large, but when it's a workflow where there are just a bunch of different pieces, what I found is that like the bigger the workflow is and the later in that the script is, the more likely it's going to crash. And it doesn't really provide any kind of information about what's causing the crash. It just crashes, and sometimes it crashes enough that I have to restart my computer, which, you know, after having that happen a certain number of times, at some point, it's easier to just split up the script. And so I kind of have my part A and my part B, and I'll have the R script run in the middle. So it's a little bit more clunky because each time I run this, I have to run it in multiple sections. But that is a working workaround. But I was just wondering if other people had run into similar issues of stability. Thanks.
Yeah, no problem. I haven't, but I mean, if I do hear of anything, I mean, we develop stuff for people all the time of similar scenarios, and happy to reach out and connect. You also spoke, Alexandra, through that about the sort of iterative process and improving that workflow, as it sounds like you guys are on Tableau Server, not Tableau Cloud. How does that kind of iteration and review process look as new versions of Tableau roll out?
That is a great question. I think one, we tend to be pretty like slow to update Tableau. And that's true for really actually all of our software in the city, is just kind of being pretty careful and, you know, looking for stability in our versions, right? So while we might kind of play with some of the newer features, we tend to kind of wait and yeah, stay. I see Matt's message. We have enterprise and we stay 2 versions behind. Yeah, I don't remember the kind of our usual rule, but yeah. I think that still though, there's always updates. I think actually that's the point we're at now, is like looking back and realizing, oh, this might be time to kind of dig into this a little bit more, and there might be some updates that need to be made given the new options in Tableau Prep and Server. Just because, again, I think this was completed in 2023, and now kind of at this point we've had kind of several rounds now of these like annual updates that we're having to make that kind of have these like somewhat substantive changes. But we're still kind of using the same framework. And I think doing this like second round of updates that I was doing at the beginning of this year, I realized like, okay, I think it's time that we have to like dig into this a little bit more and see if there are ways, like if we're moving forward, I think we need to like, yeah, think a little bit more about what that looks like, and if there are any new tools, new options that we can use to make this just like work a little bit better.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, it's fair. I think that you're in a very familiar scenario of staying a couple versions behind, and same with what Matt's saying. Do you guys have any plans or intentions to go to the cloud?
Wishes to go to the cloud, yes. I think I don't know. I honestly don't know. I think that there's like conversations around it, but that's very much kind of beyond my scope.
Yeah.
But kind of you know, our team, along with our kind of really Department of Technology, is really leading those conversations and figuring out whether that makes sense.
Okay, cool. Well, if there are no other questions, then I'm happy to wrap things up. But if anyone does have a final question, happy to take it now. But otherwise, Alex, thank you very much for your presentation. Again, I know I said, but really interesting to see what you guys are doing and how you're rolling this out. And I'm glad to see prep being so effective. I know it can have its pain points at times, but I think running this user group always shows like there are some really, really big prep use cases out there that are being very successful for businesses. So it's great to see.
Yeah, thank you. I really appreciate it. It was a great experience, and thanks.
Great. Yeah, and as I said at the beginning, this has been recorded. It will go up on we have a YouTube channel, and then it will be linked to the Bevy page where you came and entered into this event. So in a couple of days' time, if you go back to the Bevy page, you will be able to see the recording there. So if you want to pass it on to anyone or catch up, then please feel free to do so. But otherwise, have a good time at Tableau Conference next week. Those of you that are there, Alex, hopefully I'll bump into you.
Yeah.
Sees me there, say hi. And our next user group will likely be in June time. So keep your eyes peeled for that one. Thanks, everyone.